Hey, friends, welcome back to Clear Enough, the podcast about getting clear on what matters, one imperfect step at a time. I'm your host, Drew, and today we're talking about Inside Out for Grownups, not the movie version, the version you and I live inside every single day, at work, in the car, at home with our kids, lying awake at 2 a.m., replaying that one comment from a meeting 3 days ago. I want to walk through what emotional life looks like for adults through the lens of Clear Enough and through the lens of Inside Out, where your emotions are not the enemy. They're information. They're loud, messy, and often confusing information, but they are trying to tell you something. And your job is not to shut them down. Your job is to learn who's at the control panel, when and why, and then decide what you want to do about it. The cast of emotions keeps getting bigger. Let's start with the cast list. In the first Inside Out, Riley's core 5 emotions are joy, sadness, anger, fear, and disgust. Pretty simple. Big primary colors, clear roles. You kind of know what each one is going to do when they grab the controls. Then puberty hits in Inside Out 2, and anxiety shows up. Envy, embarrassment, and ennui show up. There is still a control board, but now there are more hands trying to grab the wheel. That tracks with real life. Puberty hits, and suddenly you're aware of how you look, what people think, where you fit in, and where you don't. Your social world is your whole universe. You get embarrassed, you get envious, you get anxious. And that does not feel like a quick burst anymore. It feels like constant background noise. And then adulthood hits, and the cast list keeps expanding. Now, you do not just have anxiety, you have guilt. You have shame. You have resignation. You have regret. You have a new kind of hope that's quieter and deeper than the simple hope you had as a kid. You start to look back and think, I used to feel everything so clearly. Things felt bright and sharp. I thought adults knew what they were doing. I thought one emotion at a time was supposed to run the show. But life gets complex. Your emotions follow. You're not only sad, you're sad and hopeful. You're grateful and exhausted at the same time. You're proud of your kids and also touched out and annoyed that someone needs something from you every 5 minutes. Inside Out for adults is not a single emotion at the wheel. It's at least 2 or 3 running around the board at the same time. And sometimes they have conflicting agendas. You can feel intense grief about something you lost and still feel genuine excitement about a new possibility in the same week. Or the same day. Those are both real. Neither one cancels the other out. That is a lot more confusing than the clean little control room we see in the movies. It's also a lot more honest. 2 control panels, 1 light. Here's how I picture Inside Out for adults. You do not have just one control board in your head. You have at least 2. One control panel is work you. One is often home you. The cast of emotions is the same in both rooms, but the rules feel different. At home, I can cry freely with my wife. I can be silly in the kitchen with my kids. I can say, I'm having a rough day. I need a minute. And my tone can crack, and that's okay. At work, I can still be kind. I can still act with integrity. I can still be human. But I can't always have the same conversations that I would have on the couch at 10 p.m. with my wife. I can't dissolve into tears in the middle of a client call. And I cannot say every single thing that I'm feeling in real time. So what do I do instead? At work, I use my logical brain more. I ask, what needs to get done? What's the next right step for this project or this client? I still have emotions, but they don't get to slam every button whenever they want. At home, my emotional brain takes up more room. I'm more tender. I'm more honest. I'm more likely to be reactive when I am tired because home feels like the place where it's safe to let that out. The problem comes when those 2 control panels send mixed signals. When you try to be purely logical at home and purely emotional at work, or when something massive hits your life and your system doesn't have enough bandwidth to feel what you need to feel in one area because another part of your life is on fire. In 2019, I hit one of those seasons. I was in the hardest part of my law school program. I was waking up at 5 a.m., working or studying until close to midnight, and then repeating it the next day. That schedule ran for months. Right in the middle of that, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. Now, what you may not know is that most people don't survive stage 4 ovarian cancer. The numbers are rough. We kind of knew that, but I don't think we really understood that. But the other side of it was my honest emotional capacity in that season was zero. I didn't have the mental, physical, or emotional space to grieve the way that news deserved. I didn't have the space to picture life without my mom. I didn't have the space to sit quietly and sob and let the reality sink in. So I pushed it down. I focused on tasks. I wrote papers. I studied outlines. I did the readings. I pushed myself through another week and another week and another week. My work control board had to run at full volume just so I could get through the program. My emotional control board basically had a giant mute button pressed on it. And here's the kicker. The grief didn't disappear. It just waited. About a year later, when the program eased up and my mom was finally stable and doing better, I fell apart. Not because something new had happened, but because my body and brain finally had room to process the fact that I had almost lost my mom. She's still alive 6 years later, which is incredible and rare. I'm grateful every birthday, every holiday, and every meal. But that season taught me something important. You can only shove emotions down for so long. When there's no space to feel, your system will wait. Then at some point, your emotions come back and say, okay, we're doing this now. One of the main tools that my therapist has taught me for adult versions of Inside Out is what she calls putting your emotions on trial. The idea is simple. Something happens. You see an email, you hear a tone in someone's voice, you remember a conversation from 2 weeks ago. Suddenly, you feel a big thing. Anxiety, shame, anger, sadness, numbness. Your first reaction is fast and usually messy. Mine is often, instead of accepting the first feeling as the final verdict, you stop. You take that emotion and you put it on the witness stand. You ask, what happened exactly? What did I feel exactly? What story am I telling myself about what that means? And do I have any actual evidence that that story is true? Viktor Frankl has a quote that explains this beautifully. He wrote, between stimulus and response, there's space. In that space is our power to choose our response. That little space is the trial. Here's a real example for me. My boss's assistant sends me a message that says, hey, can you meet with us this afternoon? Instantly, my stomach drops. I hear my default story. I'm getting called to the principal's office. I'm in trouble. I must have messed something up. They're going to be disappointed in me. My heart rate jumps. My thoughts sprint ahead to imagery worst case scenarios that have no basis in reality. You might know that feeling. And I put the emotion on trial. What evidence do I have that I'm in trouble? I'm current or ahead on most of my projects. My boss has not expressed disappointment in my work. We have had positive interactions recently, and I know I've built goodwill over time. Could I get constructive feedback? Of course. I love constructive feedback. Could there be a tough conversation? Maybe. But is the story, I'm a failure and everything is about to collapse, actually supported by facts? No. So I get to choose. I can let anxiety slam the controls and spiral. Or I can say, thank you, anxiety, for trying to protect me. You can step back. I'm going to walk into this meeting as someone who belongs here. That's the space between stimulus and response in action. This is where Inside Out for Grownups get even more personal. For a lot of us, the voice of our inner critic is not some random default voice. It sounds like somebody from our life. For me, my inner critic often sounds like my uncle who raised me. If you met him now, you'd see him as a good man who worked hard, who tried to do the best he could with what he had. I was a kid with a lot of issues who landed in their home under stressful circumstances. I don't pretend I was an easy teenager. But there were seasons when he made sure that I knew what a disappointment I was. I heard loser a lot. I heard the message that I was the black sheep of the family. I remember having friends over at 8:30 at night making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in the kitchen, like rascally, terrible teenagers do, and getting yelled at because we were being too loud. I played varsity basketball for 4 years in high school. I don't remember him being at many games. He worked a lot. I can understand that now as an adult, but as a kid, I just wanted him there, and he wasn't. And some of the hardest conversations happened locked in the car, driving on the freeway where I couldn't leave or hide behind a door. Those were the moments where I would hear a list of all the ways I was messing up, all the reasons I was a failure. So when my inner critic speaks, it uses his tone and his words. You were a loser. You're messing everything up. You do not belong here. Everyone else has it together. You're the problem. For a long time, I took that voice as truth. Inside out style, I assumed that if the voice grabbed the controls, it must mean it deserved to, that it must be keeping me safe. Now, I know better. When I step back and put that voice on trial, it's not kind. It's not accurate. It does not reflect all of the evidence of who I am now and how far I have come. If a friend sat me on my couch and said, I feel like I'm a loser. I feel like I'm always in trouble. I feel like I am the disappointment in every room. I would never talk to them the way that my inner critic talks to me. I would remind them of their strengths. I would list the ways they love their family. I would point to the people they've helped. I would tell them my love for them does not depend on perfect performance. So why would I not offer at least that same level of kindness to myself? Inside Out for Grownups means you learn to pick your narrator. You do not always get to pick your first thought, but you do get to pick which voice you let keep talking. You can say, I hear you, negative voice. I even know where you came from. I know you thought shaming me would somehow make me better, but we're done with that now. You do not get the mic today. And you can replace that voice with a kinder, more truthful one that sounds like your best day, one that says, you're doing the best you can with the tools you have. You are allowed to learn. You are allowed to grow. You're allowed to love even when you drop the ball. It's not cheesy self-esteem talk. That's basic emotional hygiene for adults. Let's talk about two of the emotions that often hijack the control from us: anger and anxiety. Anger is almost never a primary first emotion. It's usually a cover for something deeper that we don't want to deal with. Under anger, most of the time, you'll find fear, hurt, humiliation, or sadness. Think about a parent whose child almost runs into the street. They grab the kid back from the sidewalk. The first feeling is pure terror. Then, once the kid is safe, the parent yells at the kid. It looks like anger. It sounds like anger, but it comes from fear. That's what anger does for a lot of us. It jumps in to protect the parts of us that feel small and scared and helpless. It creates a big hot wall that feels easier to hold than the slower, colder feelings underneath. Sadness, grief, shame, fear, those can last days or weeks. They feel deep and heavy. Anger burns bright, then it passes. No wonder our brain likes to reach for anger instead of fear or sadness. If you've ever caught yourself snapping at your kids because the house is messy, when nobody's even been asked to help clean up yet, you know what I'm talking about. That's me at my worst. Tired, anxious about something at work, feeling out of control. And the easiest target is the noise and clutter in the living room. If you pause that scene and put anger on trial, you can usually find the boundary it's trying to protect. I feel disrespected, feel invisible, feel unsafe, feel like there's no room in here for me. None of that means yelling is okay. It just means that anger is trying to do a job. When you can see that, you can address the real need instead of letting anger run the whole control panel. I'm not talking about clinical anxiety diagnoses here. I'm talking about that anxious feeling that most of us get on a regular Tuesday. There are two main roles that kind of anxiety plays. Sometimes anxiety is a guardrail that keeps you from real danger. You get a bad feeling about this person. You notice that every time you drink with that group, you make choices that hurt you. You feel sick about saying yes to a project that crosses your values. Sometimes anxiety says, something's off here. Pay attention. Other times, anxiety is a guardrail that keeps you from growth. It's the tightness in your chest before you speak up at a meeting. It's the shakiness you feel before a big presentation or a hard conversation. It's the tension that shows up when you apply for a new role or set a boundary with a family member. The tricky part is that both kinds of anxiety feel the same in your body. Tight chest, sweaty palms, racing thoughts. You have to learn to tell the difference. One of my core beliefs is this: you cannot grow in a comfort zone, and you cannot be comfortable in a growing zone. If you feel completely relaxed, you're probably not stretching. If you feel stretched, you will not feel relaxed. So sometimes that anxious feeling means you're doing something brave. Keep going. Other times it means, oh, you're about to cross a line that matters. Slow down. This is where discernment comes in. Ask, is this anxiety about my safety or my integrity? Or is it about my image and my ego? Is this anxiety pointing me towards a bigger version of myself or away from myself? You can even write it out. Growth anxiety often sounds like, I might fail. People might see me trying and I don't want them to see me. Or, this is new for me. Danger anxiety, on the other hand, often sounds like, I feel physically unsafe. I'm about to betray my values. Or I'm about to repeat a pattern that always hurts me. The more reps you get with this, the easier it becomes. You start to see patterns. You recognize, oh, this is the feeling I had before that big meeting that went well. This is growth anxiety. I can breathe through this. Or this is the same sick feeling I had last time I ignored my gut and said yes when I should have said no. I need to listen to this one. When you can sort those two, you can stop letting anxiety flatline your life. You can listen when it's protecting you, and you can walk with it when it's stretching you. One of my favorite games with my kids is the Faces game. We play it in the car when they're bored. We play it when someone is sad and we want to lighten the mood. We'll say, show me a sad face. Then show me a happy face. Show me a bored face. Show me a scared face. Show me your most annoyed face. We go through as many emotions as I can think of in the moment. It probably looks silly on the outside, but it does two real things. First, it helps them build a bigger emotional vocabulary. They start to see that mad is different from hurt. Embarrassed is different from sad. Nervous is different from excited, even though they can both feel jumpy. Second, it helps me learn more words and faces too. I didn't grow up with great emotional tools. A lot of us did. I have had to learn these as an adult. One of the resources that has helped me a lot is Brené Brown's book, Atlas of the Heart. She spends chapters just naming and distinguishing emotions. The difference between guilt and shame, the difference between envy and jealousy, the difference between disappointment and regret. It sounds basic, but it connects to a principle from child psychiatrist Daniel Siegel that I use with my kids all the time. He has a simple phrase: name it to tame it. When you feel something and you can name it accurately, it loses some of its control over you. You're no longer swimming in a vague storm of, I feel bad, You can say, I feel ashamed, I feel lonely, or I feel overwhelmed. Once you can name it, you get to decide what to do next. With my kids, when they feel big feelings, I ask them a simple question. Do you want comfort or do you want to be left alone? If they fell and got hurt, or a sister said something mean, or they're just overwhelmed, I don't assume. I ask. Sometimes they say comfort, and I give them a hug, sit by them, tell them, I'm here, you're safe, and you can cry as long as you need. Sometimes they say space and they want to go to their room for a few minutes to cool down, and then they'll come out and talk. Both choices are valid. Both teach them something important. They learn my feelings matter. I get to choose what I need. I can ask for closeness or distance without being punished. Those are skills most adults I know are still trying to learn. Inside Out for Grownups is you learning to ask yourself the same questions. Do I need comfort right now or just space? Do I need a friend or a journal? Do I need a quiet drive or a good song and a loud sing-along? Naming it helps you know what to reach for. Showing up as your highest and best self. So what does it look like when my highest and best self is running the controls? When I have a big meeting, I have a little ritual. I move my body. I listen to hype music. My current favorites are Could Have Been Me by The Struts and Forget You by Machine Gun Kelly featuring Halsey. I listen into the car. I move my shoulders, my arms, my head. I get my blood moving. I let my heart rate climb in a good way. That's intentional. I'm choosing to shift from an anxious shutdown to an energized focus. I remind myself this meeting is a chance to make an impact, to make a difference. I see something that could help people. I want to communicate that clearly. I'm allowed to take up space here. In those moments, the emotions at the control panel are some mix of hope, joy, and a healthy level of anxiety. Enough nerves to keep me sharp, enough hope to keep me anchored in what matters. When I show up that way, my tone is lighter. My posture is more confident. My brain comes online. I can think clearly. I can listen. I can respond instead of react. Compare that to the version of me who lets fear and shame run the show. That version snaps at his kids about a messy house before anyone has been asked to help. That version walks into a meeting pre-defeated, already sure he's in trouble, already apologizing without knowing why. That version is not who I want leading my life. He's tired. He's scared. He's trying, but he's not the one making the big calls. Inside Out for Grownups is learning to notice which version of you is at the controls and then shifting on purpose back toward your highest and best self. Sometimes that's as simple as changing your body posture, putting both feet on the floor, sitting up straighter, and lifting your head. Taking 3 small breaths with a long exhale. Sometimes it's putting a hand on your chest and saying quietly, "We're okay. We will figure this out." Sometimes it's texting a friend, "Hey, I'm walking into something that makes me nervous. Can you send me a 1-line pep talk?" None of those things are dramatic. They're small, practical shifts that move you from "I'm a failure" to "I'm a human who's allowed to try." Let's talk about the commute home. You've had a long day, maybe a frustrating meeting, maybe an email that hit you wrong, maybe nothing dramatic, just a slow drip of stress. You get in the car. You know your kids are waiting. You know your spouse has their own list of things that happened today. You know they deserve a present, engaged version of you, but you feel empty. I live in that gap a lot. So here are a few simple things that I do to reset. 1, I use music very intentionally. Before a big meeting, I use hype songs. On the way home after a hard day, I often use breakup music. I know that sounds strange, but there's something about sad, melancholy, acoustic pop breakup songs that helps me drain out the leftover emotional sludge from the day. It gives me a place to feel a little melancholy and dramatic in the car, so I'm not bringing that same heaviness directly into the door. Sometimes I stop at the grocery store on the way home and take one slow lap around the aisles. I may not buy much or anything. I just walk. I get out of my head. I move my body in a normal, boring environment. I let my brain shift from work problems to what do we need for dinner? And do I have cereal at home? Sometimes I pray. I know not everyone listening is religious. I respect that. For me, prayer is one way I ask for help with how I show up. I'll sit in the car for a minute and say, "Heavenly Father, I am tired. I feel broken. Please help me walk in the door and give my kids the dad they deserve tonight. Please help me bring peace, not more chaos." And sometimes I write it down. I grab a sticky note and scribble, I'm frustrated because that meeting felt unfair. And I'll crumple it up and I'll throw it in the trash. Or I'll go out to my truck and I'll open a voice memo and talk for 60 seconds about what's bothering me. That tiny act of naming it and putting it somewhere external is again, name it to tame it in action. It pulls the emotion off of the control panel and sets it on the table where I can see it. Once I do that, I can walk into my house to be a little more present. Not perfect, not some idealized Instagram dad, just more present than I would be if I carried all of that unprocessed weight straight in the kitchen. I want to wrap this episode by zooming out one more level. We've talked about the growing cast of emotions as you move from childhood to adulthood, the reality that you have different control panels at work or at home, putting your emotions on trial rather than believing them by default, recognizing the voices behind your inner critic, seeing what anger and anxiety are trying to do for you, teaching your kids to name what they feel and ask for what they need, and practical ways to reset your emotional state on purpose. But all of that sits inside one bigger truth. You are not your current emotion. Pema Chodron has a line that I love. She says, "You are the sky. Everything else is just the weather. Your anxiety is weather. Your shame, weather. Your hope, weather. And your joy is weather." Sometimes the weather is clear and sunny. Sometimes it's foggy. And sometimes it's a full-on thunderstorm. The sky doesn't disappear, though, because the storm rolls in. It's still there, holding all of it. Inside Out for Grownups is learning to live as the sky, not as the storm. It's you saying, right now I feel anxious. That feeling is real, but it's not the whole truth about who I am. Right now I feel ashamed. That feeling is real, but it does not erase my worth. Right now I feel deep joy. That feeling is real, and I'm going to soak it in, but I'm not going to panic when the feeling shifts because emotions change. Your job is not to control the weather. Your job is to notice it, name it, put it on trial, and then choose what you want your next step to be. Remember Viktor Frankl's line, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Power is still yours, even when you feel overwhelmed. Remember Siegel's line, name it to tame it. That applies to you as much as it does to your kids. And remember that you are the sky. The emotions at your control panel are important, but they are not the final word. They are inputs, not your identity. So as you go into your day, I want to leave you with a few questions you can actually use. Who has been at the control panel for me today so far? Joy, sadness, anger, fear, disgust, anxiety, envy, embarrassment, guilt, hope? What is anger trying to protect me from right now? What boundary is anxiety asking me to pay attention to? What would it look like in the next hour to let my highest and best self take the wheel instead? You do not have to get this perfect. You just need to be clear enough to see what is happening inside and kind enough to try something slightly different next time. Thanks for hanging out with me today. If this episode helped you see your own inside out control room a little more clearly, share it with a friend who needs the same reminder. You never know whose inner critic needs a softer voice today. I'm cheering you on as you learn to work with your emotions, not against them. You are more capable than you think. You are more loved than you feel on your worst days. And you have more choice than your anxiety likes to admit. I'll talk to you next time.